If you feel stuck in your law practice, like you're meant for something more, but you're not sure what that looks like, this episode is for you. Maybe you're toying with the idea of leaving the law entirely, or just with the idea of going out to practice law somewhere else. Either way, you'll want to keep listening to find out what you need to know to take your first steps and the bumps you may experience along the way. Hey there, my friend. It can feel exhilarating thinking about a new path for yourself, a new direction, one that has endless possibilities, especially if you currently feel stuck in your law practice. And as you may already know, I left a 15 plus year criminal prosecutor career to coach lawyers to help them to stop feeling overwhelmed and take control of their law practices. That's expanded over the years to helping them grow their law practices strategically. This was not an overnight transition, moving from being a 15 plus year prosecutor to helping lawyers full time. And I'm so happy that I get to share with you some of that transition in today's episode. Today, I'm talking with my guest, Elena Deutsch, about what it takes to build a career that feels aligned with who you are, whether that means shifting how you practice the law or stepping into something completely different. Elena is the founder of Will, Women Interested in Leaving Law, and she helps women lawyers get clear on what they want, develop the confidence to go after it, and take action without fear of releasing the golden handcuffs. And trust me, that last part is something we're definitely diving into today. Because this topic is so near and dear to my heart, we talk about all the things, the fears that hold lawyers back from making changes to their careers, why mindset is foundational if you want to make any kind of career shift, how to start exploring your next steps without throwing everything away overnight, and so much more. This conversation is packed with insights, so no matter where you are in your career, you're going to want to keep listening. Before we jump in, I want to make sure you've downloaded my workbook, Three Sneaky Problems Stealing Your Time and Productivity and How to Fix Them Now. You can download the guide at dinacataldo.com/timepiece, PEACE. It will help you reset your relationship with time. And yes, each one of us has a relationship with time, whether you're aware of it or not. It will also help you reset your relationship with yourself and those around you. Productivity isn't just about trying to work more hours in a day, it's about who you are being on a day to day basis. Download the workbook so you can begin seeing a difference in yourself today. You can get it at dinacataldo.com/timepiece. That's PEACE. All right, now let's have a chat with Elena Deutsch, shall we? Welcome to the podcast, Elena. It's so good to have you here.
Thanks, Tina. It's so good to be here.
Can you share for our listeners a little bit about you and what you specialize in?
Sure. So I founded a business called Will, Women Interested in Leaving, and then the word big law between interested in leaving. So the acronym is Will, but I help women lawyers who feel stuck, who feel unhappy, who want to figure out what else they can do either in the practice or out, really get clear, develop the confidence and the belief and the mindset that it's actually possible that they can do it without going broke and take the action to make all that happen.
Yeah, without going broke. That's definitely something we can talk about here today. Tell
For
me how
sure.
you got into this.
So I'm not a lawyer by training, and I think that's actually an asset that I bring this outside perspective as a lawyer coach who's not a lawyer. My dad was a lawyer, and I always wanted to be one when I was a kid. And I would go with him to his office. He was a criminal defense attorney here in Manhattan, where I live. And I would go to court with him. He loved it so much. We would have mock trials around the dinner table, each of us, my mom, my dad, my brother, and I each like rotating roles of prosecutor, defense attorney, judge, and jury. And so
Wow.
I really thought I would be a lawyer until when I was 14. My dad didn't come home one night. And we were kind of like, where's dad? And I learned over the next few days and weeks that he had actually been arrested, that he was caught trying to embezzle money from a client, and he was disbarred and fortunately did not go to prison. But it was a real fall from grace. And I have so much compassion and empathy for him now, for now we know, like, you pick up the energy and the thoughts and beliefs of the five people you spend the most time around. He spent decades literally with criminals,
Hmm.
um, helping, people. He really believed people had the right to a fair trial. I think he really loved being a lawyer, but it really took him out.
That's such a fascinating story. And, I think a lot of lawyers listening can relate to watching other lawyers in the profession kind of go down that path. I know that I've seen that for sure in my
Yeah.
experience.
Mm.
And I'm curious how that impacted you and your thoughts around the legal profession or what you were going to do next.
Yeah. So when I was graduating college, it's sort of like he then had a really major health crisis. And so it just felt totally unsafe to me. I don't think I had the words for it, or it was super conscious at the time, but I just thought, you know, everyone is figuring out what they're doing after college, and friends are asking me, are you going to go to law school? And I was like, no. I just knew it was a clear no. And I just had to really find my way. I knew I wanted to help people. I ended up going into nonprofit work and then getting a master's in public health. And when I just finished my MPH, I discovered coaching, but I wasn't ready to, take on a new professional kind of training. And so, but it planted a seed. And then the further I got along in my public health career, I just felt like something was missing. And I started taking classes at NYU where I did my coach training. And I just felt like the first time I was in a coaching class and I heard my teacher say, her opening words, I was like, I'm home.
Yeah, isn't that
Yeah.
interesting how that happens when you have to try a lot of different things oftentimes to get that feeling. I know I did for sure when I was
Yeah.
trying to discover things other than the law to practice. I'm like, I don't, it's not that I hated the law at all. I actually found it really fascinating.
Yeah.
And I knew there was something more, like there was something pulling at me, and
Yes.
and that takes, a lot of courage looking back at to try these different things and then to say, this other thing, even though I'm making all my money as a lawyer,
Yes.
this
Yeah.
other thing, I could do it too.
Yeah, that's what I help people do. And so I think really my intention with Will is to help women lawyers, because I would have been that person. I would have been you. I would have had to have been like, oh, this isn't the right thing, but like now what? I
Mhm.
know I would have felt stuck. I know I have a hard time making decisions. I know I would have felt beholden. And so I just feel like I am in this unique place to help my clients, to help women lawyers who do feel that, like, shortcut some of that pain and trial and error, and
Mhm.
help them get really clear on their skills, their interests, their values, and build what they want from there. And then develop the mindset and the muscle and the capacity to believe that they can.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm laughing because I'm just thinking about, like, I actually have this little post-it note that I was working with a client yesterday. It says dive shop St. Martin. I mean, that's if anyone's watching the video, you can says, and so on one hand, she's like, she's on a leave of absence from her job and she's trying to figure out, next steps. And she's like, I want something stable. I'm not ready to make a big leap. But also, I have these friends in St. Martin, and she's a scuba diver, who have a dive shop, and they're like, come down, you can work for us. And so, and I have, I'm not advocating that she do that. And I'm also not advocating that she throw it out. I'm
Hmm.
saying, like, let's look at all your options and prioritize where you want to start exploring.
Yeah, and I think that brings me to a topic that I want to make sure we cover, which is laying the foundation for that discovery of self, that discovery of your next potential path. For me, I know I needed to clean up a lot of things as a lawyer before I could move forward. I didn't know that until I started trying all these things, and then all the overwhelm came out, and the frustrations came out, and the lack of time management, and all of this lack of emotional management. Like, I didn't know that that was an issue
Yeah.
until I started like feeling pulled in these areas. But when I saw it, I was like, "Oh, let's clean this up." And when I did, it made it so much easier for me to manage my life and a business I was growing on top of it. So I'm curious what you see in that arena and what your thoughts are on that.
That's so great. And I'm curious how you did that. Like if you had coaching, if you had help, if you had support. Because I think so many of the women who come to me, they're quite overwhelmed and frustrated when they get to me. They're either working so much they don't know how they're going to have the time to figure it out, to do all that cleanup. They don't even know that they have to, like you were in
Yeah.
that place also. They don't even know that they have this mindset work to do. And I actually just was on a call with some former clients. We did a little panel discussion about my continuation program because some people continue with me for
Mhm.
years,
Yeah.
even after they make that initial career change. Um, and you know, Gwen, this woman Gwen said, I had no idea there was so much mindset work to a career change. I just
Yeah.
thought it was all going to be like resume and LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Right?
well, we start with your energy. We start with how depleted you are. We start with, patching up those energy leaks. We start with reducing your anxiety. We
Hmm.
start with setting boundaries, just like super gentle, slowly, slowly. Then mindset work. And we define, what is mindset? I think it's a buzzword, we coaches use, but I think if you're not familiar with it, and it's just really shifting your thoughts. It's just shifting your thoughts so you can access more expensive feelings and take new action and get new results.
Yeah.
Um, so it starts with those components.
Yeah. And to answer your question, at
Yeah.
first I did not have a coach, right?
Yeah.
So when I first started feeling this tug to do something different, I just happened upon it by reviewing some journal entries. And my journal entries kept saying, bucket list, start a business. And I'm like, why am I avoiding this? And I noticed it was because of fear. And so
Yeah.
I had a whole history of my dad had a failed business, when I was growing up. And so my
Yeah.
brain said that wasn't safe, right? But I knew that's
Exactly.
what I needed. So I started going through, well, what could I do? I figured out a loose leaf tea business. That was my first stop, right?
I
It was
love
like,
that. I
what
love
can I
that.
do? What do I know how to do? I can build a store online. I can do that while I'm working full time. I have friends who are designers. I'm good at blending teas, all that stuff. So I was really good at the doing because I was an overachiever, overworking, burned out lawyer who
Yeah.
knew how to push through all of the feelings,
Yeah.
not even knowing that I had feelings. So I was really good at working. I was a workhorse. I could stay up all night long and get stuff done.
Yeah.
And it felt horrible, but I didn't really notice it in my body as much until I started noticing little things that I would do, like rushing to work in the morning. And I just started noticing, like, wow, this feels horrible. So I changed my morning routine. I made myself into a morning person. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. If I can do this, what else
Wow.
can I do? And so I
Wow.
started learning how to manage my time. And I'm like, wait a minute, I can do this. And then I
I have
started getting
chills.
into
Yeah.
I started getting more into the business because I had more time and more energy and more
Yeah.
ability to focus on it. And that's what took me into the coaching world because all I had been aware of were business podcasts, business coaches. And so
Yeah.
I went into that business coaching world, and lo and behold, they were teaching the same things I
The
was
same things.
learning by hand, right? Like kind of trying to figure it out like in the dark, which is how do you manage your time, your emotions, your
Yeah. Yeah.
abilities, like to do those things, your focus, all of that. And so coaching was like this awakening for me. And when I entered this world, I said, "Oh my gosh, everybody needs a coach. I need a coach." And
Totally.
I was totally scared to sign up for my first coach because I was like, I have no idea what you guys do, but I am in because I see the results other people are getting. And I know there's something here. Like I just felt this draw to it.
Yes, yes,
And
exactly.
that was what really got me going.
Exactly. Me too. Me too. Just like there was something here for me. That's such a great story. I love, and like everyone's path to it is different, is unique,
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah,
So
totally. And I just one thing. I mean, I do business coaching now for people also, but it's all coaching.
oh, yeah.
I do something as I call business clairvoyance coaching. I'm really using my intuition and my years of experience as an entrepreneur and helping them
Mm-hmm.
push like for especially for business owners who are stuck or struggling. They've established a little bit, but they want to grow.
Yeah.
But it's all coaching, which is I
Yeah.
think really just like you're saying, helping people shift their mindset, get clear, focus on what's important, and not. I think the core thing about coaching is not letting life drive us,
Mm-hmm.
but starting to be more proactive like you were doing with your mornings and starting a business. And you're like, oh, I can change this. I'm not just at the whim and the mercy of everything that's coming at me. And I think
Mm-hmm.
coaching is like shifting into that stance of
Yeah.
being more in the driver's seat intentionally in your life.
Yeah. And I also just I want to throw this out there because one of the things that as lawyers we do, and I think as humans we do, is we get into our patterns of day to day and we begin to think that that's the limits of reality.
Totally.
And when we get stuck in what we believe are the limits of reality, we close ourselves off to all those possibilities. So one of the things
I love
that,
that.
you
Yeah.
know, we talk about well we've had a private conversation outside of the podcast where we really talked a lot about intuition and like how we really connect with energy and source
Yeah.
and all of that and that's a really fun conversation for me. I didn't start there. Like I
Yeah.
really started in the like let's see if I were using a hammer and a nail, like those kinds of like physical reality type to try to get change going in my life.
Yes.
And then when I got into coaching, it coincided with this almost like this awakening or this energetic flow that began happening in my body and in my life. And I saw that change. And I'm just now starting to speak more to that in the podcast. I think that
Yeah.
the people who've been following me for a while kind of know I'm like on that side of things where
Yeah.
I understand energetics and all of that good stuff. But I don't talk about it a ton. And it's okay to shift, right? Because right now I'm in a transition period
Yeah.
in a coaching practice, right? And I think that it's to link them together. You don't have to stay a static person, right? You get to shift no matter what you decide. You always get to change. You always get to
Totally.
shift what you want to do,
Yeah.
even if it
Yeah.
comes from like you're a lawyer right now and you don't like the particular practice area you're in. I'll just share a block that I had is I couldn't even see beyond the kind of law I was practicing. I just
Yes.
felt so
Yeah.
stuck that
Yeah.
there's no way out. So I'm curious, do you find people come to you and they're just like, I'm totally stuck. I have zero idea of what I want to do. I just know that
Totally.
something feels off.
Totally. 100%. I'll share a couple of anecdotes. So one was a woman named Leah, who's actually going to be featured on my podcast this week. Leah Jennings. She's now also her handle now is at author Ellie Jennings. So that is a
Sweet.
little clue as to where she landed. But when she came, she was an M&A attorney. She's like, I thought I would be in big law for 30 years. I didn't know what else I could do. And the way my program is structured, the way I work with people, it's very, very structured. And I am not the most structured person, but this very step-by-step linear process came through me for lawyers. And it
Mhm.
really gives them a toehold one at a time on how to walk a path to figure out what else you could do. And through that, she opened up that she wanted to be a writer. She really discovered that for herself
Nice.
consciously and said it out loud. And then, I was super encouraging. I'm like, look, I really believe if you can become a lawyer, if you can go through 3 years of law school and pass a bar exam and practice law for however long and bill those hours and deal with all the things, you can do anything.
Yes.
So I was like, great, let's go. And it was a process for her. She left the big firm, she went to an in-house role, but that gave her the time and the space to go to yoga classes, to recover her health, to take writing classes. And then I sometimes run a mastermind called the Creator Circle, where we go through the Julia Cameron book, The Artist's Way. And the timing was right. So she joined that. And then she really started writing, and she published her first novel last year.
Oh, wow.
And she like, slayed me. She dedicated it to me. I could not
Oh
believe
my
it.
gosh, how amazing.
I know. She said to Elena, this book exists because of you.
That's so
And
sweet.
And I share that like in the hopes that there's someone listening to this who's a writer, who is a lawyer, who's the dream of being a writer, who doesn't believe that you can do it. And there are people out here like you and I and lots of other lawyer coaches who are like, let's go. You can.
Yeah. And honestly, it's so interesting because sometimes I'll hear from lawyers, well, your life just seems so easy now. Like, and it's because you're not a lawyer and anymore, right? And I'm like, that's actually not true.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not true that my life is so amazing because I'm not a lawyer. My life was amazing when I was a lawyer, but that's because I got coaching. I figured out how to manage my time and my energy and like figured out what was important to me. And then when I laid a foundation for me to leave, and yeah, it was
Yes.
scary leaving. That's something
Yes.
that you need a coach to help you with. Like I needed a coach to help me with that. So that was really helpful. And then
Good.
when I went into practicing full time, it's not that it's easier, it's different. You're still spending hours doing something different within the business, whether you're a writer writing and you're sitting and maybe you have writer's block and you got to get through that, or you're
Totally.
creating content for a podcast or reels or like those kinds of things and conquering writer's block through that,
Well, there's
right?
there's yeah, there's so much. Yeah. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
So
Yeah.
it's not like, yeah. So it's not as if it is easy doing something other than being a lawyer, but what you will discover is that if you find something that's more in alignment with who you are and who you want to be in the world, that's what makes all the difference. It doesn't have anything to do with the profession. It has to do if that profession is in alignment with what you want.
Totally. And there's that's such a rich example. Thank you. And I think what's so hard for so many lawyers is figuring out what is in alignment with what I want. What are my skills? What are my interests? What are my values? What are the specifics of what I want in my life? Do I want to work fully remotely? Do I want something that's steady? Could I do some gig lawyering while I well, I go down to St. Martin and explore the dive shop, so I just think that's what I think about that. It's really, if you don't know how to figure that out, that's what coaches like me and you and
Yeah.
other coaches are here for. The other thing is, look, starting a business is not for everyone.
Yeah.
Becoming an entrepreneur is not for everyone. And it has got to be you have to have a problem that you can help people solve. And even when you're passionate about it, like I am, trust me, I've had my ups and downs with my business. It's been like 8 years now. And there have been dark nights of the soul where I've been
Yeah,
like,
right?
can I keep going doing this, even though I love it, even though it's valuable, because it's a different kind of hard,
Yeah.
and it has to be the right hard for you.
Yeah. And it's so interesting when you talk about wanting and what do you want? I think that's one of the most difficult questions for people to answer. And when I'm on a call with somebody and I say, what do you want for your business? Let's just talk about it
Yeah.
5 years out. And they have a blank stare. They have no idea what they want. And so
Yeah.
really it becomes like a question by question, developing, shaping a future that isn't just incrementally different or better than what you have. That's just like, oh, well, that seems realistic. And that seems like maybe that could be something I could do versus, no, what do you want? What would you
Totally.
like to have in your
Totally.
life?
Yeah. And I think that's the place a coach can really expand you.
Yeah.
because we do, like you were saying, we have this limited perception of reality. And I mean, I say to some of my clients, like especially my masterminds, people I've worked with, I'm like, I mean, the great creator created all of this, like everything is actually available,
Yeah.
right? And it might not feel like it at this moment, but this actually is all here for us.
Yeah.
And you might not see your path to it, but especially for my people who want to go out on their own or starting businesses, like, and I think for people and for women and people socialized as female, like really can struggle with what do you want and not being the people pleasing good girl and just doing the thing that gets you the good grades and the gold stars because that's, you're used to those atta girls.
Yeah, that and what I've noticed too is that what can limit us is our scarcity, right? And you alluded to it there is that
Mhm.
hey, this abundance is here for all of us. The universe created all of this and it's like it's here for us. That's our natural state if we can tap into it. And part of that is allowing ourselves to have desires, allowing
Yes,
ourselves to think differently. But the thing that can close us off is believing that that is closed off to us, that that is
exactly.
not for us, that we
Right.
can only do what we've been taught to do and not learn a new skill. And I think, there's so many limiting beliefs about around this, but one is the sunk cost fallacy I hear all the time, right? It's
All
like,
the
well,
time.
I spent so much money on law school. How could I possibly leave? I need to at
Right.
least pay off my bills.
Right.
Yeah.
So I the sunk cost fallacy is such a big one. And I've been seeing it in sort of women saying like, it feels extravagant to invest in myself in coaching.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
And
Yes.
it's like, I'm like, well, you invested $200,000 or more, or whatever it was in law school. I mean, that's not the conversation we typically have, but it's just, sometimes I think that is like, well, you actually have invested a lot in yourself. And do you want to keep going down that path? Um, I heard this good thing about the sunk cost fallacy. Tell me if you think this is a useful analogy for the people they're like, do you continue reading a book if you really don't like it? Or
Yeah.
or do you continue watching a movie if you hate it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's the perfect example. I mean, I'm always like, oh, I'm not reading the rest. I go to the library a lot and I get library books. I'm like,
Me
if I don't
too.
want to read it, I'm like, no, I'm not going to finish this or middle of a movie. I'm out, right? And I think that it's really important to notice when we are, well, I guess this is good enough. This is fine.
That's right. That's right. And I think that connects back to the lack mentality you were speaking of. And look, I do a lot of my own mindset work. I work on expanding and tapping into this abundance. It's easy to say it's all out there. For me too. I struggle with tapping into it also. So that's always going to be part of my growth edge.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that giving ourselves the permission to not live a just good enough life is a huge one. And that's the opportunity cost,
Hmm.
right? That's where the sunk cost is like, okay, do you want to keep going down this path that's making you sick and miserable and unhappy and crying and like you're failing on all fronts
Yeah.
because you invested that money? Or do you want to invest some time and energy and yes, money in seeing how you can leverage all that experience? Nothing's ever wasted. You'll
Hmm.
always be a lawyer. I wrote this thing today. I was like, you'll always be a lawyer, but you don't always have to practice law.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll share that when I was on my path figuring out what I wanted to do next, it costs money. You,
Yeah.
right? Like you need
Yes.
to learn skills. You need, like for me, I definitely wanted help, so I got a coach. It's not free.
Yep.
And those investments in myself, I back at it now and I'm so thankful because I showed myself how valuable I believed I was, how worthy
Mm.
I was of having the change that I wanted, how worthy I was of having the life that I wanted. And now when I see myself hesitate, it's not because I don't think I'm not worthy. It's because I'm doing math. It's just straight up
Yeah.
math. Is like, does this make sense for me? Because what am I going to get the return on the investment? What am I expecting? It's very unemotional versus before I might feel fear, investing in myself, but knowing it was the right thing and moving forward with it always felt good after. Like I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so thankful that I
Yeah.
did that for myself.
Yeah. Yeah. I that's so great you're in that place. I have a lot of compassion for women lawyers who are like they're really struggling with that. They're like,
Yeah.
wow, that's a lot of money to
Yeah.
invest in myself.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, what and so and I sometimes we'll coach through it sometimes and I'll ask, and it's especially poignant when I might ask, if one of your kids needed a service like this to if they're a
Mhm.
parent and what would you say to their, of course I'd do this for them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You,
and they
you,
can struggle with doing it for themselves.
yeah. And it's also interesting how often we tend to delegate our authority to other people.
Oh yeah.
And I see that too with a lot of women who say, like, well, I need to talk to my husband. And like, these are breadwinners. These are people who make very good money.
Yeah.
And I just, I've never been in that position where I was ever, like, oh, I need to talk to somebody. That was never me. It was always me in charge of everything in my life, right? As I,
Yeah.
I've never been married. I've never shared those um
Yeah.
thoughts with somebody else. And so I've always made it a point to be like, no, I'm going to make a decision about this. But a lot of people don't have that practice of making a decision for themselves.
Exactly. And I I just there's no judgment around this, right?
Right.
Everyone's in the place that they're in,
Right.
and everyone, and it's, I think there's so much social conditioning that, around giving away our power as
Yeah.
women.
Yeah.
And I do think law firm life really can reinforce that of like, you have to be available when we say you're available. You have to jump when we say jump and you say how high. And I remember speaking to one of my clients when, on a consultation, and she's like, I like being a lawyer. I just like I can't be available 24/7 anymore. It
Yeah.
just is killing me. And so, just taking that stand, and she did enroll in our work together, and she ended up staying at her firm and making partner, but she also loves to read books and go to the library. And now, one of the things she said to me on that initial call is, I haven't read a book in 5 years and I love reading.
Yeah.
And it was just so heartbreaking. And then when we spoke, a year or so after our work together, sometimes I just check in with people. And
Yeah.
she's like, Elena, I just got back from the library and I've got a stack of books. And, she made that choice for herself, but it's not easy when culture and your firms and everything is like conditioning you to not really feel like fully an agency over your own life. And that's
Yeah.
that's what I think we're here to help shift them into. And I
Yeah.
think I think that desire is under the surface, which is why someone might be listening to this or reaching out for coaching.
Yeah. I mean, and for me, it was it wasn't a conscious thing when I started reaching out for help. It was like, oh no, this feels right. Like there's something right
Yeah.
about it. I don't know what it is. I can't, pinpoint it. But, you know, following that little voice, it has served me way more than not. So, those are the kinds of things that, sometimes we want to follow.
Yeah, yeah, but I think it's back to like that kind of intuition and energy. And there's such a heavy emphasis on the brain and logic
Yeah.
and not listening to the wisdom of our heart or those whispers of our soul and or our intuition. And I'm into the work of Dr. Joe Dispenza. Are you
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
doctor, right?
For
So
sure.
so I've been listening to his book Supernatural. I was supposed to go to his retreat in Los Angeles, which was postponed because of the fires. And there's there other cultures used to rely on the heart as the main brain. We actually have brain cells in our heart and
Yeah.
in our guts. So science is corroborating some of what intuitives or mystics or woo-woo people,
Or even native peoples. Like
native, yeah,
this isn't
totally.
woo-woo. This is like grounded in the natural world, but we have detached ourselves so much from that that we're no longer in connection with those parts of our heritage.
Exactly, of being human and connected to the
Yeah.
earth. So,
Yeah.
uh, and I think the law also really cultivates that thinking is king.
Yeah.
And, you're going to solve everything with your brain and detaching from your body and just sit and work and work and work and don't take bathroom breaks and,
Yeah.
collect the 6-minute bags of money and,
Yeah.
you know, and getting people back into their bodies is part of the work that I do with people too.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that's a 100% requirement whenever we're making any change, like whether you're thinking about a transition in your work or if you want to build your business as is, or if you, whatever it is you want, build your relationship better and stronger than before. It requires change. And so that's going to bring up a lot of emotions. And in our society, we have not been taught how to deal with an emotion. It's just, especially lawyers, right? It's just like push it
Right.
aside, work harder, suck it up, buttercup, keep moving.
Yeah. Yeah. I just was having this really interesting conversation with a couple of my clients about the word defiance, actually.
Mm.
And sometimes in our coaching, like you were saying, anger can come up, emotions can come up, and squash it down, squash it down. And I like to say that anger is information that our values have been violated.
Exactly. Exactly.
And it doesn't mean to act in a way that's angry, and it doesn't mean to yell or behave badly. It just is information to pay attention to. And then this client was saying she was reading or listening to a Harvard Business Review podcast about defiance, and that defiance is actually really standing in your values. And I
Mm.
think anger is sort of the information, and then defiance of saying, no, I'm not going to be that way anymore. I'm not going to work all night. No, I'm not available while I'm on
Mm.
vacation is can be a defiant move. And that defiance is actually standing in your values and not backing down.
Yeah, that's so interesting, that word defiance, because it has so many different tenors to it, right? But when you say that to me in the way that you've described it, it to me is standing in your personal power, in
Yes.
your ability to say, yes, this is for me. No, this isn't for me. I am not going to just agree with what you say if I disagree with it.
Right.
And then defiance, when I hear that word, it's almost, it put me for just a heartbeat into that, oh, that parental childlike,
Oh,
phenomenon,
interesting.
right? Where it's like that, oh, you're being defiant, right? So if you're a parent listening to this, you might say, oh, well, she's being defiant. But it's, oh, that's so interesting. Maybe it's in not in alignment with what they believe. And so then there's a values violation. And to
Right.
think about like where is that violation?
Yes.
Yeah, that's really good. I like that.
Yeah, yeah, I thought that was good. So I'm glad you enjoyed that nugget. Good,
Ah.
good. Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so where do you, when you think about lawyers who are playing with this idea of a different life, doing something different, where do you, after they've kind of figured out where they want to play, where they want to discover things, what's another foundational area? I'm thinking, finances is a big one because
yeah,
we're so tied to the golden handcuffs, right? That,
yeah,
we get paid so well as lawyers. And then when you first start out in any endeavor, you are likely not going to be making the exact same amount as a lawyer. I
yeah.
definitely wasn't. I've built myself to that point, but it takes time. So I'm curious, how do you talk through that conversation with somebody who's probably really scared to let go of something that has they can probably attribute to the roof over their head.
Totally. It's a huge barrier to getting started with the work. I think it's a major conscious and unconscious or subconscious belief that I'm going to go from my big law salary or my legal salary to zero is often the mindset. And so that's so we do some right, which is like, well, like actually if you have another job lined up, you're probably not going to go to zero, or you might take a break and maybe you'll get paid out your PTO, or you'll get some, you have vacation time saved up, whatever. Like, so we work through both the mindset and the practicalities,
Yeah.
right? But first, it's mindset first, right? Always mindset first. And how does that feel in your body? Because if you're shut down in your body, you're not going to take action too.
Right. Yeah.
And then for the deeper strategic financial planning, that's not my area of expertise. I refer people to someone like Jessica Medina or Ro
Mm-hmm.
Thomas. There are some
Mm-hmm.
wonderful lawyer coaches, financial coaches out there
Yeah.
who can really crunch the numbers with you. And many of my clients have worked with Jessica, and and it's really helped them see that they can make changes.
Yeah. Ro's been here on the podcast before. And I mean, I think that even the basics of being able to say, okay, what is a budget? What do I want my budget to look like? Which is just your allocation of funds. So if the word budget triggers you, it's just your
Yeah,
allocation of funds. Like, where do you want your funds to go every month? And then
right.
when you do your allocation of funds, then you know, okay, this is how much I want to make every month. Maybe I want to add a little more in there. Maybe I want to take, clean up some other things. Maybe I have too many TV subscriptions that you're no longer going to want to have anyway because you're going to be
Yeah.
doing a new endeavor. But when I did this work, I think I skipped over a lot of the foundational stuff. Like if I were to do it over again, I would have looked at my allocation of funds. I would have
Yeah.
said, okay, maybe I'll stay in my career a little bit longer, but I was just I had this sense that if I didn't just burn the boats, I could
Yeah.
stay in the law indefinitely.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I just said, nope, I have funds. I'm willing to withdraw from retirement accounts. I'm
Yeah,
going to like
exactly.
do
What
what
are
I
you
got to
willing to
do.
do? Yeah. And
Yeah.
I have a client who she quit her job without having something lined up, which I don't recommend or not recommend. It's a
Yeah.
totally personal decision, but she's like, I am done trying to twist myself into a pretzel. I'm done trying to make this work. And she had been saying for so long, 6 more months, 6 more months. If I could just stay for 6 more months, if I can just stay through and get the bonus. And then it's that carrot that's always dangling. And she
Yeah.
finally said, my life is worth more than whatever they're paying me.
Yeah, and that really, I think, can be the deciding factor is do I want to continue living out of alignment? Because it does
Yeah,
not feel good living out of alignment.
yeah,
If you're feeling anything other than I feel good about what I'm doing and the way I'm moving forward, then it's just time to take a look, take a
yeah,
peek at what's going
yeah,
on.
yeah. And she had to burn the boats too. She just had to get out. And now and she was really intentional with her interview process. That was something we worked on.
Hmm.
And she truly made it every interview a two-way street, and she owned her authority. And that takes work also when
Yeah.
you've left big law without another job lined up. And she definitely encountered some people saying things like, well, how I never would have done that, like how could you have left, like judgment from others. She's like, okay, this is not a place I want to work. And when
Hmm.
she was really the most real and the most authentic about what she needs, what she's looking for, and she has found a great fit culture first company that she's just started up this week, and she's super excited.
Yeah. And I also just want to share for anybody who, because I've had clients like this before who've considered jumping ship,
Yeah,
but it was a reaction
yeah,
versus taking time. Like she was being coached, so she was able to get coaching and like calm her nervous
yeah,
system and understand that jumping ship didn't make sense. Like
yeah.
jumping ship was actually going to be the same hours at less pay, and the only difference is it didn't have a billing structure. And it was like, whoa, 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 whoa. So you're going to be working the same amount of hours and you're going to be making less money, that is not in alignment with what you want in your 5-year plan,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So
Exactly.
let's take a
Yeah.
look at this. Let's calm it all down. Let's do some tweaks here versus you making this big move that's going to have a really big financial detriment to you and your family.
Yeah, yeah. And this again, this person, like, I don't advocate for people have to make those decisions.
Sure.
I mean, I'm there to be the sounding board, to help them think it through, to help them kick the tires. Um, and she was really prepared. She really had. She'd taken a leave of absence. She had gone back. She'd renegotiated her role and who she was willing to
Yeah.
work with and what she was willing to work on, what she wasn't. She worked with Jessica. She got her finances really in order.
Yeah.
And then she was ready to make that leap. And, it's courageous. It's not for everyone. And I just think there's no one right or wrong
No.
way to do this.
No.
I've had other people go from one job right to another and then continue their burnout and continue to carry their big law practices in an in-house role or a non-legal role. And then we still have coaching and work to do around that.
And just kind of as we close out, I also want to let anybody know that it sometimes takes some time to find the right fit for you. I think
Oh
I tried
yeah.
like 15 different types of things, to kind of figure out, okay, where do I want to channel my energy? Is it painting? Is it tea? Is it, teaching yoga? Is it, so I went through all these different paths trying to discover what interested me. And in the process of doing that,
Yeah.
is when I clicked with coaching and
Yeah.
decided I wanted to become a coach. It wasn't that I just knew, oh, yes, immediately. It was like, oh, no, I needed to do the things. And then it took me, oh my gosh, my coach must have been so frustrated with me. I was probably like the toughest client he's ever had. My head was so hard. You have no idea, Elena. Anyway, so by the end of a year working with my first
Yeah.
coach, that's when I came to the realization that, oh, I think I want to be a coach. I
I
was
think a
just
year is
like,
pretty fast for a
what?
lawyer to go from lawyer to
Well,
coach,
it
even though, but
wasn't
you were
just a
trying,
year, it was
it
a
was
year and all the work I had put
all
in
the work I'd
before.
done. Yeah. So and I mean, so in closing out for me, I want to say that's great. And that was your process and it got you where you needed to go. And that was your path. And
Hmm.
everyone's path is unique.
Yeah,
And I do think, like, I totally believe the women lawyers I work with, they can leave on their own, they can get there.
yeah,
But I firmly believe that the work we do helps them shortcut it, makes it
yeah,
easier, and it breaks the isolation and the, like, what's the matter with me that I can't figure this out? And the process I take people through, they end up with a short list of priorities that they can then vet and kick the tires on and maybe take a class or job shadow someone here or there so that they can hopefully streamline
yeah,
that transition. And not that there isn't sometimes like the stair stepping down, kind of like Leah leaving M&A and going in-house and then expanding her writing. Um, but it just that was like a pretty it was that was a more direct path. And I
yeah,
had to weave and bob throughout my 20s and 30s, and
yeah.
I want to help people kind of take that shortcut.
Yeah, and the reason I share that story is because it's normal to feel frustrated. So if
Yes.
you're telling yourself, you're listening to this and you're telling yourself, I've kind of been thinking about it a really long time. There's a difference between thinking about it and trying new things. And so
Yes.
you've actually got to go out and you've got to try things and it might get frustrating because you're like, "Oh my gosh, I tried this thing and it's not what I want." And then you still got to try more things. So it's not just you try one thing and it doesn't fit. It's a no, I keep trying things on, just like I'm going into a dressing room trying on new outfits to see what feels good to you.
Right, right. 100%. And it's just also like, are you just going shopping with the aim of I don't know what I want to buy, or are you going in to buy a new down coat,
Yeah.
and you want to try on the down coats?
Yeah.
So it's if I think for some people helping sort of narrow that field of experimentation, I think
Yeah.
especially for people who are later in life career changers, they feel I'm working with a woman now who's in her mid 50s and she is done being a lawyer in the way she was, but she is not done working. She's like, I want to figure out my next thing. And she's good to go. You know, she wants to figure it out and get going. So
Yeah.
everyone's path is different.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah,
that's what's so beautiful and it's supposed to be that way. We're supposed to be different. So if you're looking to other people
totally.
to say, "Oh, that's
Totally.
the path I should be taking," which is something I think I did early on is like, "Oh, look at this person, what was their path?" versus looking at it as, "Oh, that's interesting. That's one option." It's not
Right.
the way.
Right. And what feels good to me, like you're saying, when you try things on and you're like, what does this align with my with what I want for my life? Does this align with my values and my interests? You
Yeah.
know?
Do you have any
You know,
last words of wisdom you want to share?
just you can do it. You can do
Yeah.
it.
Yes.
Yeah.
You
Like
can.
whatever it is, whatever it is, you can figure out what it is you want, even if you don't know. You can make a change. You can make your law practice healthier and more fun and more joyful. And I've got clients also who open their own businesses. And um I was maybe I'll close with this. So two people I worked with, I did a little panel discussion. They started their own law firms. And that's what they wanted to do. And they're both working less hours, making the same or more money and feeling really aligned. So whatever you want, it's possible.
It absolutely is. Like it absolutely is. I just, anybody listening to this and you're having any doubts, which are totally normal, know that anything you want is possible. Really
Yeah.
is. Okay. Can you please
Beautiful.
share all the goodness about where people can find you, where your podcast, share all the good things? I'm going to link to all of them in the show notes.
Thank you so much. First of all, just thank you so much for having me. This has been so fun. We could keep talking about
Oh
all
my
this
gosh,
and
I want
more.
to talk about
Like
energy work. We should be
energy
talking about
work. We
that.
can we can we can do that more. After I come back from Sedona, I'll give you a call.
Yes.
So I'm leading a retreat for 9 Will members in Sedona next week, which I'm just so honored and
Yeah.
and touched by and so excited to be together in person with people. And my website is really the hub. So www.womeninterestedinleavinglaw.com. Again, you don't have to leave the practice, but it's really about helping you figure out what you do want. And my podcast, you can find it on all the podcast platforms, and it's Will, WILL, then with a hyphen, Women Interested in Leaving Law podcast. And
Beautiful.
on Apple and Spotify is, please come on down, rate and write a review if you like what you hear. But more importantly, like share an episode with a woman lawyer who is feeling stuck and unhappy.
Mm,
Yeah. And I'll just close with this. I was looking at the podcast data recently because it's all new to me. I just started the podcast in November and I
mm.
can't wait to have you on. And the time that most people are listening is 3 a.m.
And it's like people desire voices that speak to them in a way that resonate. And I was that person when I first started listening to podcasts. And that's why I started a podcast, is because I wanted to be that person for somebody else.
That's so beautiful. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
I hope this conversation with Elena gave you some clarity and maybe even a little courage to start exploring what's next for you. If you're feeling stuck or just know something needs to change, but you're not sure where to start, go check out Elena's work. She's got some amazing resources for women lawyers who want to leave the law. You'll find all the links in the show notes. And if you loved this episode, do me a favor, send it to a friend who needs to hear it. In fact, any episode you listen to from Be a Better Lawyer, if you think, oh my gosh, my friend would just love this, be sure to send them the link. You never know who's lying awake at 3 a.m. wondering if they're in the right place, if they need to be doing something differently. This might be exactly what they need. And as always, thank you so much for being here. If you want to apply what you're learning in this podcast to calm overwhelm and take control of your practice, book a strategy session with me, you can do that by going to dinacataldo.com/strategy session and finding a time on my calendar that works for you. All right, my friend, I will talk to you next week. Bye.